The desert sun hung low over Caldera Springs, turning the cracked asphalt into a shimmering mirage that blurred the line between heat and haze. Inside the roadside diner, the air was thick with the sizzle of grease on a hot grill and the faint tang of spilled coffee. Owen Whitlock, just 11, huddled in the corner booth, his small hands clutching a crumpled napkin as if it were a shield. His eyes darted to the window every few seconds, wide with a fear that no child should carry. Outside, the horizon stretched empty, but he knew better. Shadows had been trailing them since dawn, unmarked cars that vanished when she glanced in the rear view. Elise Whitlock slid into the seat across from him, her doctor's scrubs rumpled from a sleepless night, a stack of hospital files tucked under her arm like a guilty secret. At 37, she looked a decade older, lines etched around her eyes from questions that led nowhere. "Eat your fries, Owen," she whispered, forcing a smile that didn't reach her voice. But the boy couldn't. Not when the last town had felt their eyes on the back of her neck. Not when the whispers about his father, gone 15 years now, kept circling like vultures. "Mom, they're coming," he murmured, voice barely audible over the diner's hum of truckers and locals nursing mugs of black coffee. The door chime jangled, cutting through the tension like a knife. Nolan Sage Mercer stepped in, his boots thudding against the worn linoleum. At 41, he was a relic of roads long traveled. Leather vest, scarred from 1,000 miles, silver-streaked hair tied back, and on his right hand, a battered ring that caught the fluorescent light. The crest on it was faded, a symbol from a brotherhood forged in the chaos of war, sealed with blood, and a promise whispered in the dark: watch each other's backs, no matter the cost. Sage had worn it like a talisman, even after the Iron Promise crew became his new anchor. He nodded to the waitress, a habit from years of brief stops, and claimed a stool at the counter, the scent of engine oil and desert dust clinging to him. Owen's gaze snagged on the ring as Sage flexed his fingers, ordering a black coffee. The boy's breath hitched. He leaned forward, ignoring his mother's warning glance. "Mister," he said, voice trembling but clear, "that's my family's crest, on your ring." Sage froze, the mug halfway to his lips. The diner noise faded, the clink of silverware, the low murmur of conversation, replaced by the sudden roar in his ears. He turned slowly, meeting the wide eyes of the kid, then flicking to the woman beside him. Her face paled, hands tightening on the table edge. Whitlock. The name hit him like shrapnel from an old wound. 15 years ago, in a sand-swept hell overseas, a soldier named Elias Whitlock had dragged him from a burning wreck, blood soaking his fatigues as he growled, "You owe me nothing but your word, Mercer. Find my family if I don't make it back." Elias had vanished after that last op. No body, no closure, just echoes in classified files Sage had chased until they led to dead ends. What?" Sage managed, his voice rough, like gravel under tires. He slid off the stool, approaching their booth, with the caution of a man who'd seen too many ambushes. Up close, the boy looked like a ghost of that soldier, same sharp jaw, same unyielding stare. Elise's eyes narrowed, protective, but curiosity flickered beneath the exhaustion. "The ring," Owen pressed, pointing with a fry-dusted finger. "Dad had one just like it. He said it meant promise, family promise." His words hung in the air, innocent and shattering. Elise reached for him, but Sage was already kneeling beside the booth, the ring glinting as he held out his hand. The crest matched, a stylized hawk clutching an olive branch, worn but unmistakable. Elise's breath caught. "How do you know my husband's name?" she asked, voice low, laced with the steel of someone who'd fought too many battles in sterile hospital rooms. "Elias saved my life," Sage said simply, the words tasting like dust. "We were brothers in arms. He made me swear, if anything happened to him, I'd look out for what he left behind." He glanced at Owen, then back to her. "I tried, doors slammed shut, but you're running from something." She hesitated, the files crinkling under her grip. He never came home. No explanation, no body, just silence. And lately, these cars, they follow us from the hospital in Eldridge to every nowhere town. I ask questions about Elias, and suddenly grants dry up. Colleagues warn me off. It's like the past is hunting us. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Sage's mind raced, unmarked vehicles, closed doors. It smelled like the old corruption, the kind that buried good men to protect secrets. Iron Promise didn't ride into fights blind. They uncovered truths, lit them up for the world to see. But this was personal, a thread pulling him back to a debt unpaid. Owen watched him, hope flickering in his eyes like the first stars pricking the twilight. "You knew, Dad. Can you help? Mom says we're alone, but that ring says different." Sage's jaw tightened, the weight of the promise settling like an old engine revving to life. He'd walked away from too many ghosts, but not this one, not Elias's boy. "Yeah, kid," he said, voice steady. "I knew him. And that crest, it's more than metal. It's a call to stand." He rose, glancing at Elise. "You two aren't alone anymore. Let me make a call." As he stepped outside, the desert wind whispered across the lot, carrying the faint rumble of distant thunder or engines. Elise watched from the window, her hand on Owen's shoulder, uncertainty warring with a spark of trust. In that moment, amid the heat and the haze, a forgotten vow stirred, binding strangers in a chain of honor that could shatter shadows or drag them all into the dark. The diner door swung shut behind Sage, his phone already to his ear. "Hawk, it's Sage. Got a situation. Whitlock's kin just walked into my life, and trouble's rolling in hot." The line crackled with the voice of his Iron Promise brother, a promise reignited, ready to burn through the lies. The desert wind picked up as Sage pocketed his phone, the call to Hawk still echoing in his mind like the low growl of a Harley idling in the distance. The sun had dipped below the horizon now, painting the sky in streaks of bruised purple and gold, the kind of twilight that made every shadow feel alive with intent. He scanned the parking lot, his eyes narrowing at the faint dust trail rising from the access road. A convoy of sorts, but not the welcoming rumble of brothers. No, these were the unmarked beasts, sleek and anonymous, the ones that prowled the edges of forgotten truths. Inside the diner, Elise pulled Owen closer, her fingers tracing absent patterns on the back of his hand. The boy's eyes hadn't left the window, fixed on Sage's silhouette against the fading light. "Mom," he whispered. "He's like Dad. The way he stands, like nothing can touch him." Elise forced a nod, but her pulse thrummed with the weight of unknowns. She'd buried questions about Elias deep, under layers of hospital shifts and single-parent resolve, but this stranger's ring had unearthed them all. The crest wasn't just a memory, it was a beacon, pulling ghosts into the neon glow. The waitress cleared a plate nearby, her movements deliberate to avoid the tension coiling in the booth. "More coffee?" she offered Elise, but the doctor shook her head. Her voice steady, despite the tremor in her chest. "No, thank you, we're fine." Fine was a lie she'd told herself for years. Fine after the official letters stopped coming. Fine when colleagues at Eldridge General hinted at sensitive matters without meeting her eyes. But the cars had started 3 weeks ago, right after she'd pulled old files on Elias's last deployment, whispering questions to a retired contact who suddenly hung up and vanished from his home. Sage pushed back through the door, the chime a sharp punctuation in the quieting diner. He slid into the booth opposite them, his presence filling the space like the scent of worn leather and resolve. "Iron Promise is en route," he said, voice low, pitched for their ears alone. "Hawk, Tom Daniels, my road captain. He's rallying the crew. They'll be here in 20, blocking the lot without a shot fired. We don't do chaos, we do clarity." His eyes met Elise's, holding the gaze of a woman who'd stared down death in operating rooms, but flinched now from the shadows of her own past. Owen leaned forward, his small frame buzzing with a mix of fear and fire. Iron promise? Like knights on bikes? Dad told stories about brothers like that, men who kept promises when the world forgot. The words landed soft but sure, stirring something in Sage's chest, an echo of Elias's gravelly laugh around a campfire, sharing tales of home under foreign stars. That night, after the wreck, Elias had pressed the ring into his palm, not as a gift, but as a tether. This crest? It's older than us, Mercer. Hawk and Olive, peace through vigilance, swear you'll carry it for whatever comes. Elise's hand stilled on Owen's. I don't know if we can trust this, she admitted, her voice cracking just enough to reveal the fracture lines. Elias, he was special forces, deep ops. When he didn't come back, they said accident, but the details never added up. No body, no debris report. I pushed once, years ago, and my research grant evaporated overnight. Now these tales, it's like someone's erasing us to bury him. Her eyes flicked to the window, where headlights pierced the dusk. 2 sets, closing in slow and deliberate, like predators scenting vulnerability. Sage nodded, the ring heavy on his finger as he drummed it lightly on the table. I get it. Chased those same ghosts after he pulled me out. Woke up in a field hospital, him gone on the next bird. Our unit was tight, promises sealed in silence, the kind that outlast bullets. But the brass, they classify everything, bury the inconvenient. Elias wasn't just a soldier, he was the guy who remembered names, who wrote letters home mid-patrol. If someone's hunting you, it's because you're the loose end. He paused, the diner's fluorescent hum underscoring the gravity. Outside, the engines grew louder, gravel crunching under tires that screamed official indifference. The first vehicle pulled into the lot, a black SUV, tinted windows reflecting the diner's sign like a mocking mirror. It idled, doors remaining shut, but the weight of observation pressed in. Owen shrank back, but Sage placed a steady hand on the table, a barrier of calm. Stay put. My crew's got eyes on this. His phone buzzed. Hawk's text. 5 out. Perimeter set. Film rolling. Iron Promise didn't charge in with fury. They encircled with truth. Cameras capturing every shadow, every evasion, turning secrets into public reckonings. Elise's breath came shallow. The stack of files suddenly feeling like evidence in a trial she hadn't agreed to. Why now, after all this time? She murmured, more to herself than Sage. But the boy answered, his voice gaining strength. Because of the ring, Mom. It's like Dad's watching, telling us to fight back quiet like he did. Sage met the child's eyes, seeing Elias there, the unyielding core beneath the fear. In that booth, amid the cooling fries and the press of night, a pact formed, unspoken but ironclad. Not vengeance, but vigilance, a promise renewed to shield what one man had died protecting. The second SUV arrived, parking parallel, blocking the exit with casual menace. No one emerged, but the message was clear. Halt, submit, fade away. Sage rose slowly, signaling the waitress to keep clear. His frame silhouetted against the glass. The rumble of motorcycles crested the horizon then, a thunder of loyalty rolling in like dawn, breaking the dark. 20 bikes, then 30, forming a loose ring around the lot. Engines purring low, headlights cutting through the haze, riders in vests emblazoned with the Iron Promise Hawk. Hawk led them, his face a map of scars and steadfastness, pulling up beside Sage with a nod that spoke volumes. Whitlock's legacy? Hawk rumbled, dismounting, his eyes scanning the SUVs. Sage nodded toward the booth. Kid and his mom, Elias's blood, they're the promise. Hawk's gaze softened fractionally, then hardened on the intruders. Then we hold the line. Lights on, truth out. He tapped his helmet cam, the red light blinking to life. Broadcasting live to the crew's network, irrefutable proof against the void. From the booth, Owen watched, awe edging out terror as the bikers formed their silent guard. Elise gripped his hand, a tear tracing her cheek, not of weakness, but release. The SUVs hesitated, engines revving once before peeling away into the night, tails vanishing into the ether. But the retreat felt temporary, a shadow slinking back to regroup. Sage returned to the table, the weight of the encounter settling like dust after a storm. "They're gone for now," he said, "but this isn't over. Elias's truth, we'll drag it into the light. For him, for you." As the Iron Promise riders idled, a brotherhood reborn in the face of erasure, the diner lights flickered on against the encroaching dark. Owen smiled faintly, the crest on Sage's ring catching the glow, a symbol of promises that refused to die, binding the lost to the found in a ride toward redemption. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The motorcycle's engines faded to a low hum as the Iron Promise riders formed a protective phalanx around the diner's lot, their headlights carving stark paths through the settling dusk. Sage lingered by the booth, his shadow stretching long across the checkered floor, while Elise gathered the scattered files with hands that still trembled faintly. Owen's eyes darted between the window and the man who'd become an anchor in the storm, the boy's small chest rising and falling with the rhythm of newfound courage. The air inside carried the lingering bite of cooling coffee and the faint metallic tang from the parking lot gravel, stirred by the exodus of the SUVs. Hawk dismounted fully now, his boots crunching as he approached the door, vest creased from the road's relentless pull. He was a broad-shouldered figure, scars tracing his jaw like roads on a weathered map, eyes sharp under the brim of his helmet. "Clear for the moment," he said, sliding into the booth's edge, his voice a gravelly anchor. "But those rigs, government plates scrubbed clean, federal ghosts, the kind that don't leave tracks." He nodded to Elise, respect in the gesture, then to Owen, offering a rare half-smile that softened the lines of his face. "Kid, you spot anything familiar in those cars?" Owen shook his head, but his grip on the napkin tightened. "Just, black, like the ones that followed us from Eldridge. Mom showed me pictures once, Dad's unit, shadows in the sand." The words hung, innocent yet loaded, pulling at the threads of memory Sage knew too well. Elias had spoken of his boy in stolen moments between patrols, voice rough with pride, a son who'd grow strong, carry the crest without the weight of war. Elise exhaled slowly, stacking the files with deliberate care, her scrubs whispering against the vinyl seat. "Eldridge General, that's where I work," or worked until the question started. She met Hawk's gaze, then Sage's, the exhaustion in her eyes giving way to a quiet resolve like embers stirring under ash. "I pulled Elias's records last month. Not much. Redacted ops, a vague KIA stamp. But one name kept surfacing, Project Veil. Something about deep cover, assets buried to protect or hide." Her voice dipped, the diner's hum fading as if the walls themselves leaned in. Outside, a rider adjusted his bike, the chain rattling softly, a reminder of the circle holding firm. Sage leaned forward, the ring's crest pressing into his palm as he clenched a fist. Project Veil. He'd heard whispers in veteran circles, a black-budget tangle of espionage and deniability, the sort that swallowed men like Elias whole. "That op," he said, voice low. "We were pulling intel on a network, arms, shadows crossing borders. Elias led the extract. He got me out, but the bird went down hard. I woke up stateside, no debrief, just a medal and a sealed file. Chased it for years, contacts dried up, leads turned to smoke." The memory surfaced unbidden, the acrid burn of smoke in his lungs, Elias's hand hauling him through debris. The promise exchanged in the roar of flames. If Vale's resurfacing, it's because you're stirring the nest. Hawk's jaw tightened, his fingers drumming a silent tattoo on the table. Iron Promise has danced this dance before. Corruption in suits, burying brothers to save faces. We don't punch clocks or badges. We document, we expose. But this... He glanced at Owen. The boy's wide eyes reflecting the neon signs flicker. This is bloodkin, means we ride deeper. The crew outside shifted, a subtle repositioning, scouts peeling off to trail the SUV's dust, cameras still rolling, feeding data to a secure line where tech-savvy brothers pieced together plates and patterns. Elise's hand found Owen's again, a tether in the unraveling. "I didn't want this for him," she murmured, her voice threading with the pain of years unspoken. "Elias left me the house, the stories, but no warnings. Just that ring he wore. Said it was from his grandfather, a symbol for keeping watch. When the cars started, I thought it was paranoia. Then a colleague slipped me a note, 'Stop digging, or Owen pays.' The confession landed like a stone in still water, rippling through the booth. Owen stiffened but didn't pull away. Instead, he looked to Sage, seeking the strength in the man's steady gaze. "You did right by asking," Sage replied, the words carrying the weight of his own regrets. Nights spent nursing beers in roadside bars, the promise to Elias gathering dust until this moment. "Hiding only feeds the dark. We'll get you to a safe house. Crew's got a spot off the grid, old ranch outside Caldera. No traces, no tales." He rose, signaling Hawk, who nodded and stepped out to coordinate. The diner felt smaller now, the world pressing in through the glass, but the bond forming here was iron, forged not in fire, but in the quiet choice to stand. As they gathered to leave, Elise pausing to pay the check with a nod to the waitress, who'd watched the whole scene with quiet solidarity, Owen tugged at Sage's sleeve. "You think Dad's out there? Like, really?" The question pierced, raw and hopeful, the desert night whispering through the door cracks. Sage knelt to the boy's level, the scent of leather mingling with the faint sweetness of uneaten fries. "I don't know, kid, but that crest, it's his word carried forward. Means we honor it, find answers, protect what's yours. That's the promise." Owen nodded, a spark igniting in his eyes, mirroring the low glow of the biker's taillights outside. They emerged into the cooling air, the lot transformed into a bastion of rumbling steel and vigilant shadows. Hawk waved them toward a sturdy pickup at the rear, neutral, untraceable, while the convoy reformed, engines syncing in a symphony of loyalty. Elise buckled Owen in, her movements precise, a doctor's calm reclaiming her. But as the pickup pulled out, flanked by the Iron Promise riders, Sage rode shotgun up front, phone in hand, already plotting the next thread. The road ahead twisted into the star-pricked, dark, unmarked cars, a memory for now. But the hunt for Elias's truth revved like an engine beneath them all. Miles blurred under tires, the ranch lights eventually piercing the horizon like a beacon of borrowed sanctuary. But in the rear view, a single headlight flickered far behind, persistent, probing. Hawk's voice crackled over the comms. "We've got company. Double back, eyes open." The promise tightened its grip, pulling them deeper into the web, where loyalty would test its mettle against the cold machinery of forgotten sins. The ranch sprawled under a canopy of stars, its weathered fences etched like veins against the moonlit scrub. The pickup's tires crunched over gravel as it crested the final rise, the Iron Promise convoy fanning out behind like guardians of the night. Sage scanned the rear view, the persistent headlight, a distant prick in the blackness, weaving through the twists with unnatural precision. Hawk's voice cut through the cab's quiet hum, steady over the comms. "It's hanging back, but not shaking. Could be a scout. We'll loop the perimeter, draw it in if it bites." Elise shifted in the back seat, her arm around Owen, who peered out the window with wide-eyed vigilance. The boy hadn't spoken since the diner, but his small hand clutched the edge of the seat, knuckles pale. The air inside carried the faint chill of desert night seeping through the vents, mingling with the earthy scent of sagebrush kicked up by their passage. "This place," she said softly, breaking the tension, "it's really safe. No one knows about it." Sage nodded, his eyes never leaving the road. "Cruise haven, off-grid, no addresses, just coordinates for those who earn them. Elias would have approved. Quiet corners for mending what's broken." The words stirred the ghost of their shared past, the ring on his finger a cool weight against the steering wheel. He'd imagined delivering on the promise 100 times. A simple check-in, a letter of assurance. Not this, racing shadows with a widow and her son, unraveling a veil that had shrouded a brother's fate. They rolled to a stop near the main house, a low-slung structure of adobe and timber, porch lights spilling warm across the yard. Riders dismounted in synchronized silence, forming a loose cordon as Hawk directed 2 scouts to circle back. The single light behind them flickered closer now, then veered sharply, engine note rising in a brief snarl before fading into the dunes. "Slip the noose," one rider murmured into his helmet mic, voice crackling back to the group. But the unease lingered, a thread pulled taut. Inside, the ranch kitchen glowed with the soft flicker of lanterns, electricity sporadic by design. Elise settled Owen at a scarred oak table, where a crew medic, Lena, offered him a mug of warm milk laced with honey. The woman was a veteran nurse, her hands steady from years patching road-weary brothers, eyes kind but assessing. "Rest easy, little one," she said, ruffling his hair. "We've got watch tonight." Owen managed a nod, the steam rising like a veil of comfort, but his gaze sought Sage, who stood by the window, phone in hand, reviewing footage from the diner's cams. Hawk joined him, unfolding a battered laptop on the counter, its screen casting blue shadows across his scarred features. "Plates are ghosts. Fake overlays, but the undercarriage matches feds. Project Veil's got teeth." He tapped keys, pulling up grainy stills, the SUV's underbellies, serials half obscured, cross-referenced against a network of open-source intel the crew maintained. No Iron Promise brother hacked illegally. They pieced truths from public scraps, veteran forums, leaked memos that surfaced like driftwood. Elias's last op. Whispers say it tangled with private contractors, shadow firms laundering ops under government flags. If he saw something cross the line, they bury it deep. Elise approached, files in hand, her steps measured on the creaking floorboards. The kitchen smelled of fresh brewed coffee and faint wood smoke from the hearth, a sanctuary's embrace against the chill. "I found this in his effects," she said, sliding a faded photo across the table. It showed Elias, younger, arms slung around a grinning Sage in fatigues, the hawk and olive crest pinned to their collars. Owen crowded in, tracing the image with a finger. "That's you," he breathed. "And Dad. He looks happy." Sage's throat tightened, the photo a punch to the gut. Elias's laugh lines, the dust-caked boots, the unspoken bond of men who'd stared death down together. "He was the glue," Sage said, voice rough. "Kept us whole when the world cracked. That promise? Not just words. He pulled me from fire, said carry the crest for the ones waiting home." He met Elise's eyes, seeing the echo of that fire in her, resilient, unbowed. "You asking questions lit a fuse. They want you silent, because you're the last voice." Outside, the wind sighed through the corrals, carrying the distant whinny of horses stabled for the crew's rare downtimes. Hawk closed the laptop with a soft click. "We ride at dawn, scout Eldridge, pull strings without pulling triggers. Lena's got contacts in the medical circuit, might shake loose on those threats." He glanced at Owen, then Elise. "You're under our wing now. Family chosen, promise kept." but sleep evaded them. In the small hours, Sage stepped onto the porch, the night air crisp. Stars wheeling overhead like silent witnesses. Owen joined him, blanket draped over thin shoulders, the boy's presence a quiet pull. "Can't sleep?" Sage asked, settling on the steps. Owen shook his head, staring at the horizon where the headlight had vanished. "Dreams about Dad, him running, shadows chasing, but in the dream he gives me the ring, says hold the line." The words carried Elias's cadence, innocent prophecy from a child's heart. Sage removed the ring, holding it in his palm, the metal warm from his skin. "This isn't yours yet, kid, but it's yours to earn. Means standing for what's right, even when it hurts." Elise appeared in the doorway, silhouetted by lantern light, her expression a mix of gratitude and guarded hope. "He's right, Owen. Your father taught us that. Quiet strength over noise." She knelt beside them, the three forming a fragile triad under the vast sky. The pursuit wasn't ended. The single light had been a probe, a warning that the web extended further. But here, in this borrowed refuge, the promise breathed anew, loyalty weaving through loss, redemption flickering like the first hint of dawn. Dawn broke slow, painting the ranch in hues of rose and gold, the convoy stirring with purpose. Sage slipped the ring back on, the crest a vow etched in silver. Hawk revved his engine, the sound a clarion call, as they prepared to peel back the layers of veil. Owen watched from the porch, fist raised in a small salute, the boy who'd spotted a symbol now carrying its weight. The road to Eldridge beckoned. Truths buried, waiting to surface, honor the engine driving them forward against the tide of silence. If this tale of quiet promises stirs your heart, hit that like button below. It fuels the ride for more stories like this. The convoy rolled out from the ranch at first light, a steel serpent winding through the scrubland toward Eldridge. The engine's throaty rumble echoing off the canyon walls like a vow spoken in unison. Sage rode point on his weathered Harley, the wind whipping at his vest, carrying the sharp scent of creosote bushes and sun-baked earth. Behind him, Hawk flanked the pickup, carrying Elise and Owen, the boy's face pressed to the window, eyes tracing the horizon as if it held answers etched in the dawn haze. The air hummed with purpose, but beneath it lay the undercurrent of caution. Scouts peeling off at junctions, their helmet cams feeding live feeds to the crew's encrypted line. Elise gripped the door handle, her knuckles whitening against the worn leather. The ranch had offered a night's reprieve, but sleep had been fleeting, haunted by fragments of Elias's voice in old voicemails, promising return. Now, with the iron promise at their side, the weight felt shared, though doubt gnawed at her edges. "Eldridge, General," she said to the driver, a quiet rider named Jax with a medic's steady hands. "It's on the outskirts. I know a back entrance, avoids the main gates." Her voice held the precision of operating rooms, but her gaze flicked to the mirrors, searching for tails in the rising sun's glare. Owen shifted beside her, the blanket from the ranch still draped over his lap like a makeshift shield. "Will we find Dad's stuff there? Like clues?" The question hung soft, laced with the unfiltered hope only a child could muster amid the storm. Jax met his eyes in the rear view, offering a nod. "Clues, yeah, and more. We're not storming in. We're listening, watching. Promises like your dad's. They leave echoes." Sage signaled a slowdown as they crested a ridge, Eldridge unfolding below, a sprawl of low buildings ringed by chain link and sodium lights, the hospital's white facade stark against the ochre hills. The town whispered of faded prosperity, boarded shops, faded billboards advertising long-gone fares. He pulled over at a dusty overlook, the convoy idling behind, dust settling like a veil. Hawk drew up beside him, killing his engine with a low cough. "Plan's simple," Hawk said, voice pitched against the wind's sigh. "You and Elise go in quiet. Visitor logs, old records. We hold the perimeter, eyes on entries. Any shadow moves, we light it up with cams, not fists. Sage dismounted, boots sinking into the gravel, the ring's crest catching a glint from the climbing sun. He approached the pickup, leaning in through the open window. Elise's eyes met his, a flicker of resolve mirroring his own, the shared burden of unfinished oaths. "Stick close," he murmured. "If it feels off, we pull out." Elias wouldn't want recklessness. He'd want truth. Owen reached out, touching the ring briefly, a silent affirmation. The gesture stirred Sage, a reminder that this ride wasn't just for the past, it was forging a path for the living. They parted ways at the hospital service lot, the pickup blending into employee traffic, while Sage and Elise slipped through a side door marked for staff. The corridors hummed with the sterile beep of monitors and the faint antiseptic tang that clung to every surface, a world Elise knew like her own scars. She led him to the records wing, her badge, still valid, a small Mercy, granting access to a dimly lit archive room lined with humming servers and dusty file cabinets. "His personnel file," she whispered, fingers flying over a keyboard. The screen's glow, casting hollows under her eyes. Redacted, but there might be cross-references. Sage stood watch by the door, the muffled chatter of nurses filtering through like distant thunder. His mind replayed the photo from the ranch, Elias's grin, the dust of their last patrol. That op under Project Veil had been a labyrinth, intel on illicit arms flows, borders blurred by private interests wearing official masks. Elias had uncovered a fracture, funds siphoned, allies turned ghosts. If he crossed that line, Sage said softly, they didn't just lose him. They erased him to seal the crack. Elise paused, a file pulling up. Elias's discharge papers stamped incomplete, a note buried in metadata about asset relocation. Her breath caught as she scrolled deeper, the chair creaking under her shift. Here, a transfer order, dated weeks after his supposed end, to a black site, coordinates scrubbed, and this. She tapped the screen, pulling a linked memo. Warnings about family inquiries compromising operational security. The words chilled the air, turning the archive's hum into a cage. Outside, through a narrow window, Sage spotted Hawk's bike idling across the street, a sentinel in the morning bustle, but the quiet shattered with footsteps, measured, authoritative, approaching from the hall. Elise minimized the screen, heart pounding visible in the pulse at her throat. A man in a crisp suit entered, badge glinting under the fluorescence. Internal affairs, or something shadowier. "Dr. Whitlock," he said, voice smooth as polished stone. "Visiting hours are limited, and you, unescorted." His eyes flicked to Sage, assessing, the air thickening with unspoken threats. Elise stood, chin lifting in the defiance she'd honed through lonely years. "Routine check on old patient files. My husband's service connected to a grant I oversee." The lie flowed steady, but the man's smile didn't reach his eyes. Grants can be reevaluated. Questions about the past, best left buried. He stepped closer, the scent of expensive cologne clashing with the room's sterility, a veiled warning hanging like smoke. Sage moved then, casual but blocking the door, his frame a quiet barrier. "We're just leaving," he said, voice even, the ring tapping lightly against the frame as he gestured Elise ahead. No confrontation, just presence, the iron promise way, turning scrutiny back on the watcher. The man hesitated, phone half drawn from his pocket, but outside, the faint rev of engines signaled the crew's nearness, a reminder that isolation was illusion. They emerged into the sunlight, the hospital's shadow stretching long behind them. Elise clutched a printed excerpt, slipped into her pocket during the exchange, a fragment of coordinates that might lead to Elias's last stand. Owen waited in the pickup, waving as they approached, his face alight with unspoken questions. Hawk pulled up, helmet under arm. "Company inside?" he asked, reading their tension. "Probes," Sage replied, mounting his bike, the engine roaring to life beneath him. "Vale's got ears everywhere, but we got a thread, sight in the Badlands, off the grid." The convoy reformed, peeling away from Eldridge with measured speed, the persistent headlight from the night before nowhere in sight, but its echo lingered in their vigilance. Miles out, they paused at a roadside pullout, the desert unfolding vast and unforgiving. Elise shared the printout, the paper crinkling in the breeze. This could be nothing, or everything. Owen traced the map's lines, hope flickering anew. Sage watched him, the boy's curiosity a mirror to Elias's unyielding spirit. The promise pulsed stronger now, a current binding them against the erasure, redemption not in closure, but in the relentless pursuit of light. As the sun climbed higher, casting wavering heat from the asphalt, the crew pressed on, the Badlands beckoning like a forgotten battlefield. Shadows stirred in the distance, but loyalty armored them, honor the fuel for the ride ahead. The Badlands rose like the jagged spine of some ancient beast, eroded spires clawing at the midday sky, their rust-red faces cracked and unforgiving under the relentless sun. The convoy snaked through narrow arroyos, dust plumes trailing like ghosts in the wake of the bikes, the air thick with the acrid bite of heated rock, and the low thrum of engines straining against the uneven terrain. Sage gripped his handlebars tighter, the vibration travelling up his arms, syncing with the pulse of the ring on his finger, a constant reminder that this path wasn't chosen lightly, but carved from a debt etched in sand. And silence, 15 years gone. Elise rode in the pickup with Owen, the boy's face glued to the window, tracing the labyrinth of canyons with a finger smudged from the ranch's dirt. The printout lay open on the seat between them, its faded ink mapping a cluster of coordinates deep in this forsaken stretch, once a forgotten military outpost, now a whisper in veteran tales of black ops and buried secrets. "It feels like Dad's hiding here," Owen said, voice barely rising above the road's rumble, his eyes reflecting the play of light and shadow outside. Elise pulled him closer, her arm a steady anchor, though her own heart raced with the echo of that suit-clad man's warning in the hospital archive. Questions had costs, she'd learned. Now, with the Iron Promise's shield, those costs might finally demand payment. Hawk rode flank, his bike weaving close to the pickup, signaling stops with a gloved hand raised high. The crew had thinned to a core dozen, scouts ahead, marking safe passages, while others held the ranch's rear guard, monitoring feeds for any digital trails. No one spoke of risks over the comms. Iron Promise moved with the precision of men who'd turned personal losses into a creed of quiet accountability. Sage glanced back, catching Elise's eye through the dust-caked glass. A nod exchanged, laden with the unspoken trust building between strangers bound by one man's legacy. They crested a final ridge, the coordinates pinpointing a shallow basin ringed by wind-sculpted hoodoos, the ground littered with rusted debris half buried in silt. Twisted metal scraps that hinted at old wreckage, vines of barbed wire snaking through the earth like veins. Sage killed his engine first, the sudden silence amplifying the wind's hollow moan through the stones. "This it?" he asked, dismounting and approaching the pickup as the others fanned out, boots scuffing softly, eyes scanning for movement. Elise unfolded from the vehicle, the printout fluttering in her grip like a fragile flag. Owen hopped out beside her, the dry air carrying the faint metallic tang of long-exposed iron. The memo referenced a relay site. Data handoff for Vale Ops. Elias's transfer order ended here. She pointed to a low concrete bunker, half sunken into the basin's floor, its door warped and ajar. Vines creeping over the threshold like nature's attempt at concealment. The structure squatted amid the desolation, a relic of secrets meant to fade, but the hawk and olive crest etched faintly on a weathered plaque caught Sage's eye, faded but unmistakable, an echo from their shared past. Hawk circled the perimeter, his shadow stretching long as he knelt to examine tire tracks in the dust. Fresh, layered over older ones, suggesting recent visitors. "Not abandoned," he murmured into the comms, voice gravelly with caution. "Someone's been tending the grave." The crew deployed discreetly, 2 riders scaling a nearby outcrop for vantage, cameras whirring to life, capturing the scene in high-res streams. No charges, no breaches, just documentation, the Iron Promise's weapon of choice against the fog of denial. Owen edged closer to the bunker, curiosity overriding the knot of fear in his gut. "Dad might have stood right here," he whispered, the words stirring a breeze that rattled loose pebbles. Sage placed a hand on his shoulder, the touch light but firm, guiding him back. "Easy, kid. Echoes first, then steps." Inside his chest, the promise to Elias twisted sharper. This place reeked of the ops that had claimed his brother-in-arms, the kind where vigilance turned to vanishing acts. Elias had dragged him from similar ruins, bloodied but breathing, sealing their bond with that ring. "Carry it home, Sage, for the watch we keep." Elise pushed the door wider, the hinges groaning like a reluctant confession, revealing a dim interior lit by shafts of sunlight piercing cracks in the roof. Dust motes danced in the beams, settling on shelves of mildewed crates and a console scarred by time, its screens dark but humming faintly with residual power. She rifled through a drawer, pulling a logbook bound in cracked leather, pages yellowed but legible. "Entries from his unit," she breathed, flipping to a marked section. Names, dates blurred, but one stood out: Elias Whitlock, noted for asset recovery on the ops tail end, followed by a terse addendum: relocated per protocol, no further contact. Sage leaned in, the air inside cool and stale, carrying the musty scent of forgotten paper and faint ozone from dormant electronics. His finger traced the line, the ring clinking softly against the page. Protocol, that's code for buried alive. The words hung heavy, pulling at the threads of his own evasion, waking in that field hospital, Elias's absence a void filled with official platitudes. If Vale had relocated him, it wasn't to safety. It was to silence a witness to the fractures. Contractors skimming shadows, turning national shields into personal vaults. Outside, Hawk's voice crackled, urgent. "Movement! Dust trail! East Ridge! 2 vehicles! Low profile." The crew tensed, engines idling low as riders positioned, headlights ready to flood the basin if needed. Owen froze, clutching Elise's side, but she knelt to his level, her voice a steady thread. "We face it together. Your father taught us that. Truth over fear." The boy nodded, drawing strength from her calm, the family's crest now a shared emblem, worn not just on Sage's hand, but in their resolve. The vehicles crested the ridge, another pair of unmarked SUVs, engines purring with predatory patience, halting at the basin's lip. Doors opened, spilling 3 figures in tactical gear, no badges visible, but their stances screamed authority's edge. One stepped forward, megaphone in hand, voice amplified across the wind. "This site's restricted. Vacate immediately. Federal jurisdiction." The words were routine, but the undercurrent chilled, a bid to scatter before truth surfaced. Sage emerged from the bunker, logbook tucked under his arm, flanked by Hawk and 2 riders, cameras openly rolling. "We're citizens seeking answers," he called back, voice carrying clear and unyielding. "Public records, open air." He had to explain the private party. No advance, just the steady gaze of men who'd stared down worse, their presence a wall of accountability. The figures conferred, shadows shifting as the sun beat down, the basin's silence broken only by the distant call of a hawk wheeling overhead, poetic irony or omen. Elise joined them, Owen at her side, the logbook held like evidence in the light. One of the figures, a woman with sharp features and a clipboard, descended cautiously, her eyes narrowing on the crest. "Dr. Whitlock, this isn't your ground." But Elise held firm, the wind tugging at her hair. "It's my husband's. And these men, they're honoring what you buried." The exchange stretched, tension coiling like a spring, the crew's lights flickering on subtly, illuminating every evasion. The standoff held, words traded like probes, until the woman signaled retreat, vehicles reversing, dust swirling in their wake. But not before she dropped a parting shot. "Dig too deep, and the veil drops on you all." They vanished over the ridge, leaving the basin to its secrets, but the logbook's pages whispered more. A hidden drive in the console, in coordinates to another site deeper in the Badlands, where Elias's final echo might wait. Sage pocketed the drive, the weight of it sinking with the ring's promise. Owen looked up at him, eyes bright with the fire of discovery. "We're closer, right? To Dad's truth?" Sage ruffled his hair, the gesture paternal, binding. "Closer, yeah, and we'll keep riding till it's clear." The convoy reformed under the climbing sun, engines roaring back to life, the Badlands' shadows lengthening as they pressed on. Loyalty armored them, but the web tightened, redemption's road winding toward a confrontation where silence would finally break, honor demanding its due in the heart of the forgotten. The Badlands deepened into a labyrinth of twisted canyons, the sun now a merciless hammer beating down on the convoy as it threaded through narrow passes where shadows pooled like spilled ink. Sage led the way, his Harley's engine a steady growl against the oppressive quiet, the hidden drive from the bunker tucked secure in his vest pocket, a digital relic pulsing with potential revelations. The air scorched the lungs, laced with the dry rasp of sand, grinding under tires, and the faint bitter scent of creosote blooming in the heat. Behind him, the pickup carried Elise and Owen, the boy's silhouette etched against the window, while Hawk and the core riders formed a vigilant wedge, their presence a silent oath against the encroaching isolation. The coordinates pulled them to a concealed ravine, its entrance masked by a tumble of boulders that the scouts had shifted aside with winches and sweat. Sage dismounted first, boots sinking into the powdery soil, the ring's crest warm against his skin from the ride's friction. "This is it," he said, voice low as the crew gathered, engines cut to murmurs. The ravine opened to a derelict silo, half swallowed by earth, its corrugated walls scarred by wind and time, a forgotten node in Project Vale's web. Vines clung to the seams like desperate fingers, and the air hummed with the subtle vibration of hidden generators buried deep to power ghosts. Elise stepped out, shielding her eyes against the glare, Owen close at her heel, the logbook clutched under her arm like a talisman. The boy's face had hardened since the basin, the wide-eyed wonder tempered by the day's revelations, but hope flickered in his gaze, a spark inherited from Elias, unquenchable. "Feels like the end of a story," Owen whispered, the wind carrying his words like a prayer. Elise nodded, her scrubs dusted with red earth, the weight of the hospital's warnings now fuel for resolve. "Or the beginning of answers," she replied, her voice steady, threaded with the quiet strength that had carried her through solitary years. Hawk signaled the perimeter sweep, riders fanning out with cameras active, their lenses capturing the silo's facade in crisp detail. The faint etchings of official seals, weathered but legible, hinting at layers of classified purpose. No overt threats stirred, but the air felt charged, as if the Badlands themselves held breath. Sage approached the entrance, a reinforced hatch camouflaged by debris, its lock rusted but yielding to a makeshift pry from Jax's tools. The door groaned open, releasing a puff of stale air thick with the musty odor of disuse and faint electronics. Ozone and decay intertwined. Inside, dim emergency lights flickered to life on motion, casting elongated shadows across a control room frozen in time. Consoles coated in dust, monitors dark but primed, walls lined with server racks humming faintly. Sage's hand brushed the ring as he scanned the space, memories flooding like sand through cracks, Elias's voice in the ops chaos promising home amid the roar. "Check the drives." He directed Hawk, who powered up a terminal with a portable battery, the screen blooming to life with encrypted files that cracked under the crew's open-source decryption tools. No breaches of law, just persistence piecing public echoes into clarity. Elise moved to a side alcove, her doctor's eye catching a personal touch amid the sterility. A small locker, unmarked but ajar, spilling faded envelopes and a worn journal. She pulled it free, pages crackling under her fingers, Elias's handwriting leaping out. Tight script detailing the ops unraveling, shadows within shadows, contractors twisting veil into a profit machine, siphoning funds through ghost accounts, burying whistleblowers to protect the flow. "He found it," she breathed, voice echoing softly. "The fracture." He was going to expose it. Relocate meant extraction but not home. They kept him contained, silenced, to plug the leak. Owen crowded in, reading over her shoulder, his small finger tracing a sketched crest in the margin. Hawk and olive, a defiant mark. "Dad didn't die there. He fought." The words landed with innocent certainty, stirring the room's hush. Sage joined them, the terminal behind him yielding its payload. Video logs, grainy but clear, showing Elias in a similar bunker months after the KIA stamp. Briefing a handler on the corruption, names, roots, the rot at Vale's core. Then, a cut. Relocation to protective custody, but the feed ended abruptly, files redacted to voids. No body, no finality, just a man caught in the machine. His promise to family, the one thread they couldn't sever. Hawk's voice broke the spell from the console. "Live ping, someone's monitoring, shutting it down." But the damage was done. Outside, dust stirred anew, engines approaching from the ravine's mouth. The same sleek SUVs, reinforced now, 4 in total, blocking escape with calculated precision. Figures emerged, tactical vests over suits, weapons holstered but present. The lead, a stern-faced operative with the woman's sharp eyes from the basin, calling out, "Stand down, this ends here. Project assets are not for civilian eyes." The crew held formation, no advance, just the steady whir of cameras broadcasting to secure lines, turning the confrontation into a public ledger. Sage stepped forward, logbook and drive in hand. Elise and Owen at his side, the family unit unbroken. "Ends," he echoed, voice carrying across the gap, the wind whipping dust into veils. Elias Whitlock's truth doesn't end. It demands light. The operative's gaze flicked to the ring, recognition dawning. But she signaled her team to hold, the weight of documentation pressing like an invisible tide. Tension coiled. The sun dipping toward the canyon rims, casting the silo in golden relief. Owen's voice pierced the standoff, small but unyielding. "He was my dad. You can't bury that." The words hung, humanizing the fray, cracking the operative's facade. Whispers passed among them. Perhaps the feeds had reached unseen eyes, veteran networks stirring, the corruption's web trembling under scrutiny. The lead lowered her megaphone, conferring via earpiece, then nodded curtly. "Files are sealed for review. No further pursuit, pending internal audit." The retreat was measured, vehicles peeling away, leaving the ravine to echo with their departure. In the silo's fading light, Elise closed the journal, tears tracing clean paths through the dust on her cheeks. Not grief's flood, but release's quiet tide. He kept fighting in silence, for us. Sage knelt to Owen, the boy's eyes meeting his with Elias's fire. You carried his crest right, kid. Spotted it, held the line. He slipped the ring off, pressing it into Owen's palm. Not a transfer, but a sharing, the metal warm with shared purpose. Hawk clapped Sage's shoulder, the crew gathering. A circle of chosen kin under the vast sky. As dusk settled, painting the Badlands in purples and silvers, the convoy rolled out, the silo a marker left behind, its secrets now seeds for broader reckoning. Elias's fate remained veiled, protective hold, perhaps alive in shadows, but the promise fulfilled, family guarded, truth ignited, honor's engine carrying them home. Redemption wasn't in perfect closure, but in the ride onward, bonds forged stronger than any erasure. The road stretched clear, stars emerging like promises kept, the iron promises Hawk soaring eternal. Thank you for joining this journey of quiet honor and unbreakable vows. If these tales of redemption touch your soul, subscribe for more. Let's keep the promises alive together.